Check, 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 check. Okay, so a lot of times I leave this microphone up at the front.
us learn to walk and sing at the same time. Okay. I think we still have a few stragglers coming in. So, if y'all would kind of get yourselves in here, we're welcoming you. And Bob, when you come through, could you close the doors, please, so the sound doesn't go out there? All righty, are we all ready? Okay. Go out into the highways and byways. Give the people something of your new vision. May you possess a small light, but uncovered, let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. And if you would stand as you are willing and able, and turn to number 31, or 311, not 30, 311 in the gray hymnals. I will warn you, the video does not have the words on it. That's why we have the books out for everyone. But it's a wonderful production of this song done by one of our sister churches. So, if you would please stand.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a willow with the wind, let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. and round we go again. Let it be a dance.
Welcome. Welcome to those that have been here before, those who are new. We welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Topeka. I would remind you to turn off your phones, iPads, whatever, and so that we can all be present and be here together. Oh, no, yes, we just did the song. I did the welcome out of order. Okay. And now Lou will do a reading for us.
If we agree in love, there is no disagreement that can do us any injury. But if we do not, no other agreement can do us any good. Let us endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bonds of peace. Hosea Ballou.
Aaron, you have some RE announcements for us. No announcements?
Just that, yes, I do have an announcement. If you have some adult-sized gloves or full-size blankets, not just lap blankets, the RE Nature Savers class is collecting them through, it's just next week, 2 weeks, through New Year's. Okay, that works. And that is all for now. And children, if you would like to come on up, I have something for you here. I'm going to read a story about John Murray, who was the first Universalist ministers here in the United States of America. He started a church in Massachusetts. So if you would like to color a picture, I have a bunch of pictures and crayons up here. Let me tell you about John Murray. This is from the Creating Home curriculum from UUA, so you know it's going to be good. First, think about this for a second. Do you know how your life is going to turn out? No. You might expect something to happen, but maybe something else entirely different happens. Did that ever happen to you? Yeah? Okay. That's happened to me too. Well, you never know which way the wind will blow or in which way the wind blows. The wind can change directions and maybe change your life. And that is what happened to John Murray. As a young man, John had an excellent fortune blow his way. He had a fine education, a steady job, a loving wife, and a young son, and life was good. Then suddenly everything changed. His wife and their son became sick and passed away. John lost his job, lost his money, and then was put into jail because he couldn't pay his bills. So from having just everything, he went to having pretty much nothing. But he was a very religious man. He was a universalist, and he had even preached about a loving God. Now he was not so sure what he believed. He felt like his life was over. Friends urged him to go someplace where he could start again. He sailed for America on a ship named the Hand in Hand. The wind blew the ship toward their destination, New York, but then fog rolled in and the ship ran aground in New Jersey instead. John and a few others volunteered to leave the ship and go on land and get directions and supplies. As he was walking ashore, he saw a farmhouse with a small chapel or church beside it. It belonged to somebody named Thomas Potter. He greeted John and gave him food for everyone on the ship and invited John to come back and have dinner with him that night. When John came back, Thomas Potter showed him the chapel. Thomas Potter said that he believed in a loving God who wanted to accept all people into heaven. John said that he believed the same thing. Thomas Potter told John that he had built the chapel and was waiting for God to send a minister. You, John, are that minister. I have waited for you a long time. John did not want to hear this. He was not a preacher anymore, and he was determined to never preach again. Yet, Thomas Potter seemed confident that John was a universalist preacher he waited for, and he asked John to preach on Sunday. I can't preach on Sunday, said John, because as soon as the wind changes, my boat will set sail, and I must be on it. If the boat has not sailed by Sunday, will you preach? Asked Thomas Potter. If I am still here on Sunday, I will preach, said John Murray. Okay, what do you think happened? The wind didn't change? Do you think the wind blew the boat and he sailed away? Betrayal. Okay. That could have happened, I suppose. But the boat was not gone. The boat did not sail in any way, whatever happened. And so John Murray stayed, and he preached that Sunday morning, which was September 30th, 1770, in the chapel Thomas Potter built for him many years before. The end. And that is how we got the first Universalist minister here in the United States of America. All right. Who would like to carry out our lantern? Okay. And then Coleman, will you carry it next week? Okay.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And now I have had no joys or concerns or sorrows given to me, and I see no birthdays listed. If there is any type of a joy or sorrow that you would like your community to share with them, we do have an open mic for that if you would like to come share with us. Please be sure to stay like 3 inches from the mic, or no one will hear you here or at home.
Good morning.
Please, sir.
Good morning.
Yes.
I'm Beth Forrester, and I would like to share a joy that Kent and I very soon, on December 22nd, will celebrate our 43rd wedding. And Kent says it's 44, so.
My parents were the same way.
But I would like to say that we know many of you for that time period, because we came here to the UU FT before we got married. So you are our family.
I'm Debbie Scanlon, and I have an announcement for the Christmas sale by the Meadowlark Estates. It's in Lawrence, and it's next Saturday between 8 and 12 p.m. And Laura Moore is busy creating baskets for it. And
If people would like some more details, can they talk to you about
yes.
that? Thank you. Yes, if you would like some more details about that and what will be there, please talk with Debbie. And now Lou will do a reading for us.
Step at a time.
Yep, one step at a time.
This brief history of Hosea Ballou is pieced together from two sources. One is Universalist Manifesto by Charles Howe, published in the UU World in July 2005. The other is from the UUA website in a section titled Ballou's Conversion. In 1789, Hosea Ballou attended the Baptist revival held in his hometown of Richmond, New Hampshire. Moved by the preaching during this event, which was touted as the Great Reformation, Ballou, aged 19, stepped forward to be baptized. Like his friends and the 100 or so others around him who also stepped forward to be saved, Ballou had been gripped by fear. But unlike the others professing their new aching need for God's forgiveness and grace, Ballou was not fearful enough. He believed the dominant Calvinist theology of his era, which claimed God separated the elect from the damned before they were born, and that except for those chosen few, all were doomed to eternal damnation, fire, and brimstone for their sins. Yet he did not feel clenched in the grip of an angry, vengeful, wrath-filled God described by the two preachers who led the revival. Ballou was upset because he wasn't upset enough. To figure out what was going on, Ballou turned to the Bible to make sense of the doctrines of his newly professed faith. His mind became troubled anew. It seemed to him that nothing in the Bible supported belief in the Baptist doctrines he was supposed to espouse. Belief in eternal damnation for all human beings, except a preordained elect few. In no case would anyone be sent to eternal punishment by a loving God. No sin was that great. Salvation was universal. Hosea Ballou's A Treatise on Atonement, written in 1805, made a strong and immediate impact, giving Universalists a common theological base from which to spread their message. Ballou was quickly recognized as the leader of the Universalist movement. Nearly 2 centuries after Ballou's conversion, Bishop Carlton Pearson underwent a similar conversion. Both men were catapulted into a different set of beliefs than they had previously held, in both cases because they came to see God as loving, rather than as vengeful and angry. But Ballou, a teenager when he underwent his conversion, went on to a successful ministry in the Universalist denomination. Pearson, in his early 40s when he was converted, was already highly successful as a Pentecostal minister, and things went in a different direction for him. The following is in his own words, as quoted on www.reform-magazine.co.uk in 2014. I was watching the evening news about the Hutus and Tutsis returning to Uganda. I was angry with God and very disgruntled. Those poor African people were suffering so violently, and I was overwhelmed with compassion and grief and guilt and anger. You could see the little babies' bellies distended and swollen, and they were scratching and crying, and their mother was sitting there with this blank expression on her face, with her breast deflated, the child pulling out at no milk. I thought, they're probably Muslims or into juju. They're headed to hell. I said to God, how could you allow that? Call yourself a God of love, and you let these poor people suffer, then suck them right into hell. And that's when I felt I heard God say, so that's what you think we're doing? I said, well, that's what the Bible says. They're not Christians. They're going to hell. Can't you see? They're already there. That is hell, and I'm pulling them out of there, out of that place that you, as humans, have created for them and yourselves. I had never thought of it that way before. I got excited about that, and I shared it in my pulpit the next Sunday, and bam, I thought they were all going to get it like I got it. Some did, but those who didn't expressed their disdain to others, and things began to go downhill fast. I started telling our congregates to stop telling people they weren't saved and start telling them they were safe with God, because with Jesus, their sins were already washed away, and they didn't know it. And our job was to tell them. I don't care if they've got a needle hanging in their vein or they're HIV positive. Tell them they're loved and forgiven. That was the beginning of the gospel of inclusion that got me into so much trouble.
As many of you are aware, over 2 years ago, a team of us started a monthly series on anti-racism. After that first year, we shifted our focus slightly to the 8th principle, in addition to the UU7 principles that affirms and promotes journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. It is our hope today's service will show us how a committed man and a committed UU congregation can do just that. Just over a week ago, if you are a regular listener to NPR's Morning Edition, like me, you heard the announcement of the death of Bishop Carlton Pearson, a closer friend to Unitarian Universalism than you may be aware, and of All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa in particular. Carlton Pearson was an associate minister at All Souls for 15 years, but that is getting ahead of the story. A few years ago, our UU General Assembly took place in Kansas City. One of the sessions presented the programming at All Souls in Tulsa, including praise-style music and a presentation by Bishop Pearson, as well as others. Vicki and I scrambled to get there. We were already aware of his story and attended that session. It was amazing. Oshara was on the planning board for the Kansas City GA, and she has followed his ministry since she was a youth. I remember her asking me about him many years ago when she was first here, and at that time I did not know about him. This morning, we will introduce you to Carlton Pearson to commemorate his life and contributions to our denomination and the spiritual lives of many throughout the world. I will start with his obituary in the New York Times, a more secular response, and a remembrance from All Souls Unitarian in Tulsa, who loved him deeply. Oshara will share what Bishop Pearson has meant to her, and Vicki will look at what All Souls Tulsa has experienced by inviting a Pentecostal minister and his congregation to join them. New York Times, November 21st, 2023, by Trip Gabriel, and these are excerpts from that. Bishop Carlton D. Pearson, an evangelical pastor who was deserted by his large congregation after declaring that hell does not exist and advocating gay rights, died on Sunday in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He was 70. His death in a hospice care center was caused by cancer. Before he was cast out by the evangelical establishment, Bishop Pearson was one of its leading lights, a board member of Oral Roberts University, an advisor to President George W. Bush on faith initiatives, and one of the country's first black televangelists. An annual revival at that Bishop Pearson led, the Azusa Conference in Tulsa, a mix of ministry and music, drew as many as 20,000 people and spun off best-selling gospel records. But his fall was decisive once he questioned core church doctrines, leading to his formal branding as a heretic and the loss of most of his congregation. While watching a TV report in the 90s on children starving during the Rwandan genocide, Bishop Pearson had an epiphany that you heard about earlier. It was a view he shared in interviews and preached at church, at his church, the Higher Dimensions Family Church, which he co-founded in 1981 and which grew into one of the largest in Tulsa, known for its multiracial pews in a city and a faith, evangelical Christianity, that was largely segregated. I believe that most people on planet Earth will go to heaven because of Calvary, because of the unconditional love of God and the redemptive work of the cross, which is already accomplished. Bishop Pearson told the Tulsa world in 2002, adding that he included Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists among the loved. I am re-evaluating everything, he said. The doctrine known as universal salvation, and which Bishop Pearson called the gospel of inclusion, is an old one in theology, but it is rejected by many Christian churches, including the conservative denomination that ordained him, the Church of God in Christ, the nation's largest black Pentecostal group. In 2004, the Joint College of African American Pentecostal Bishops declared Bishop Pearson a heretic. It said Christians who followed him put at risk the eternal destiny of their souls. The evangelical leader, Oral Roberts, who had been a mentor to Bishop Pearson and called him his black son, denounced him in a 12-page letter. Bishop T.D. Jakes, one of the country's most prominent evangelical pastors, told Charisma magazine that Bishop Pearson's theology was wrong, false, misleading, and an incorrect interpretation of the Bible. Following the logic of universal salvation, Bishop Pearson stopped preaching that homosexuality was a sin. We just love people, he told his congregation, and we are the most radically inclusive worship experience in the city of Tulsa. In 2007, he and other religious leaders lobbied Congress to pass protections against hate crimes targeting gay people. The issue of not special but equal rights for God's same-gender loving children is a moral imperative in every community in America, he said, across the street from the Capitol. Because of Bishop Pearson's apostasy, I had to look this up, It's a refusing to continue to follow, obey, or recognize a religious faith, a defection. Attendance at his church dwindled from thousands to mere hundreds. Associate pastors quit, he lost the church building in a foreclosure, but he also found a new audience among some liberal Christians and the national news media. He became a minister in the United Church of Christ in one of the most liberal Christian denominations in America. It's interesting to me how they leave out UUs in this altogether, and that's where he landed. His branding as a heretic was covered in detail in an episode of the public radio show This American Life in 2005, and you can look it up. I urge you to listen. That broadcast was the basis for a Netflix biopic, Come Sunday. Simon & Schuster offered Bishop Pearson a book deal, and he wrote The Gospel of Inclusion in 2009, in which he declared, "We are all bound for glory." Another book, God is Not a Christian, nor a Jew, Muslim, Hindu, followed 2 years later. Bishop Pearson's agent said he often asked him about whether he regretted the loss of prestige, income, and worshipers that followed his turning away from the Pentecostal Christian orthodoxy. I said, "You've lost a lot of money. Don't you think maybe you should have just shut up?" He would always say, "No, I don't believe I made a mistake." Now, from the Tulsa, the blog that the UU Tulsa Church publishes, called Beyond Belief, we at All Souls Unitarian Church reflect on the life of Bishop Carlton D. Pearson. We find ourselves in a state of deep gratitude and contemplation. Bishop Pearson, who passed away on November 19, 2023, at the age of 70, was not just an affiliate member minister at All Souls. He was a beacon of progressive theology, a voice for universal love, and a beloved member of our church family. He helped people of all cultures and faiths know that God loves them beyond belief, and Reverend Dr. Marlon Lavenar, senior minister at All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa. Bishop Pearson's journey began in Tulsa, where he attended Oral Roberts University. His early ministry, characterized by dynamic preaching and vibrant gospel music, quickly captured the hearts of many. His Everything's Gonna Be All Right TV program and the impactful Azusa conferences established him as a leading figure in American Pentecostalism. However, it was his courageous theology shift that brought him closer to our community at All Souls. Embracing the doctrine of universal reconciliation, Bishop Pearson's message evolved to one that proclaimed God's unconditional love for all, irrespective of religious or cultural backgrounds. This inclusive theology resonated deeply with our Unitarian Universalist values of compassion, inclusivity, and human dignity. Part of his legacy, besides his love for God and his curious intellectual pursuit and his natural humor, is simply the way he loved human beings, said David B. Smith, Executive Director of Worship at All Souls. Joining All Souls in 2008, Bishop Pearson's affiliation with us marked a new chapter in his ministry, one where his message of love and acceptance found a nurturing home. His presence enriched our congregation, bringing a unique blend of charismatic spirituality and inclusive theology that appealed to a broad spectrum of believers and seekers. He and Reverend Marlon Lavenar became dear friends, colleagues, and collaborators in creating worship, teaching classes, and bringing the ideas of Unicostalism to the public. Unicostalism combines the freedom of thought and belief of Unitarian Universalism and the freedom of the spirit and the body of Pentecostalism. Some of the most profound and transcendent moments of embodied worship resulted from this effort. Embodied worship. Bishop Pearson's legacy is not just in the sermons he delivered or the conferences he led, but in the lives he touched. He was an incredibly devoted father to his children and a friend to those who knew him closely. He was a man who stood firmly in the face of adversity, holding on to his conviction that love was the true essence of faith. His life was a testament to the power of embracing change and leading with love. All Souls Assistant Minister Reverend Randy Lewis shared, "In spite of our broken hearts, we celebrate a life that was truly well lived." He left us an incredible sense of humor, an incredible body of work through which we will continue to hear his incredible sense of humor, breadth of knowledge, and transcendent wisdom echoing in our hearts. As we mourn his passing, we also celebrate the richness of his life, his humor, wisdom, and relentless pursuit of a more inclusive understanding of the divine. It will continue to inspire us. In the words of our senior minister, Reverend Dr. Marlon Lavenar, "In an era of division, he stood out as a voice of unity and reason." And indeed, his voice will continue to echo in our hearts and in the halls of All Souls. We extend our deepest condolences to Bishop Pearson's family and to all who were touched by his extraordinary life. As we look forward, let us carry forward his legacy of love, grace, and unity. In doing so, we honor a life truly well lived, a life beyond belief.
I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul, in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. My name's Oshara, and I'm glad to be here today. I wanted to sing that song because his life gave me joy. I grew up in the Church of God in Christ. I grew up Pentecostal, and everybody was going to hell who did not accept the way that I believed. And I'm glad for his life. I'm glad for the difference that he made and showed us and opened the doors. And my personal testimony here is that when I came to UFT, I left the mainstream church in 2005. I joined UFT in 2006, and I'd never experienced, I can say the greatest thing I experienced that I can leave a mark with is Helen and Jane, and I'd never met anyone like them before. And I thought, when I came to this, well, if I met people like that, something's going to come off on me or whatever. because that was the way that I was brought up in my thinking. But to be able to spend time with them when I was invited to their home, and I was invited to dinner, and I was invited to look at pictures and and see how they just people, and to be able to experience that was the greatest thing for me, and it showed me so much love, and in that encapsulated everything that Bishop Carlton Pearson also embodied and helped me to realize, and that we can walk in love and healing and hope in our lives, and that makes all the difference. And I'm glad to be able to sing the way that brings me joy. Bishop Carlton Pearson sang all the time, and he was able to still do that as a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I just wanted to come and be a part of the service because my friends invited me to be a part of the service today, and I'm glad to be here to represent the voice and the life and the experience of Carlton Pearson. So thank you so much.
So Unicostalism combines the freedom of thought of Unitarian Universalism and then the spirit and the body of Pentecostalism. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but when she started singing, I started tearing up. Now, did I tear up, Janine, when you were speaking earlier? No, because you were here. You were giving me food for my head. You gave me food for my heart. So I think it's common for UUs to use the identifier Unitarian as shorthand for our faith. But we shortchange the second part of our name, Universalism. That part of our heritage demonstrated in the writings of Hosea Ballou and John Murray, among others, was no less radical than the denial of the Trinity. Rejecting the concept of predestination, the belief that some people were preordained for eternal damnation, Universalist ministers and congregations believed in universal salvation. All of humanity had a get out of hell card, not just a few. In 2018, the sources I'm pulling from come from the UU world, and you can go back and you can do a search on the UU world or the UUA site for Carlton Pearson and find these. But they did a review of the movie that Janine talked about come Sunday about what happened to him. And when Pearson folded the remaining members of his ministry from 6,000 to about 200 left into the congregation of Tulsa's All Souls Church, he found a welcome home for his gospel inclusion. And inherent in his gospel of conclusion was recognition of the damage done by racism and systemic white supremacy. But our historical stance for universal salvation, with our fourth principle, which affirms and promotes a free and responsible search for truth, our first, inherent worth and dignity, it helps understand how the merger became possible. However, it was not easy or immediate. First of all, the two ministers had already formed a relationship. In 2001, a local TV station was looking for religious leaders to debate federal funding for faith-based initiatives. Pearson was one of President Bush's spokespeople, obvious choice for the pro side, but there weren't too many in the Bible Belt of Tulsa to be on the con side, so Lavinar, an outsider fresh out of Harvard Divinity School, was tapped. And eventually the men became friends and colleagues, bonding sometimes over grief. I get into that, Well, when the story broke that evangelicals were calling Carlton Pearson a heretic, Lavinar recognized right away that what he was preaching classic humanism, universalism. He called Pearson up and invited him to lunch. Marlon was very sensitive and seemed to understand even more than I did in some ways where I was, Pearson recalls. He was probing my mind and I his, and he was offering brotherhood. I didn't have many friends right then at that time. When he became affiliated in 2606 with UUC, the United Church of Christ. He once said the UU minister grasped my position on universalism even more than the UUC folks. In the beginning, the merger happened gradually. First of all, Bishop Pearson accepted an invitation to preach at All Souls, to a packed congregation that day, and that morning's offering was donated to Bishop's group, renamed Higher D. During the summer of 2008, All Souls extended another invitation. New D could have the 11:30 service slot free of charge during the time when All Souls went down to a single 10 o'clock service. Well, what surprised everyone, about half of the people who showed up at the 11:30 service were All Souls folks. Prior to that summer, an opinion survey they at All Souls asked members what change they'd like to see most in the church. More than 90% said they wanted the church to be more diverse and multicultural, but there was no plan to make it happen. By August, when plans for the church year were being formulated, Pearson Bishop informed All Souls of the intention to merge his congregation with the UU's. So about 200 of the High D congregation joined All Souls. It was possible, not only because of the theological basis of universal salvation, because Pearson saw the radical justice as a central tenet of Unitarian Universalism, evident in the first and the fourth and the eighth principles and the work that UUA's been doing and we've done here as far as adopting the eighth principle. Remember, the two ministers already had a relationship built on respect, empathy, caring, and proximity. And Oshira has shared with us a YouTube called, it's about racism in the white church. And one of the things the black Pentecostal, former Pentecostal member says is the very first thing is proximity builds empathy. So see, there was already empathy being built between these two men. Well, it might seem like this was an answer to what All Souls members said they wanted in that opinion survey, because we're really good at surveys around here. But it also wasn't easy. All Souls doesn't vote on new members and visitors, and neither do we. It just accepts them. So there were no board meetings on whether to merge the congregations, no committee about how to smooth the transition, no discussion groups about how the church would adapt to make the new members welcome, or just as important, how to keep the old members in their comfort zone. There was no time. As Kimberly French wrote in her UU World article, it might seem obvious that if you suddenly mix a couple hundred African Americans into an all-white church in a segregated city, confronting racism is bound to be an issue. But at All Souls, it's easy to believe that's not what happened. What the church confronted instead were mixed feelings about Christianity and musical style. That September, All Souls ministers, in consulting with the board, made a quick decision to turn most of the music at the 11:30 service over to the New D tradition as a way to minister to the sudden influx of new members who had lost so much of their church experience. On paper, everything else in the two services was and is the same: sermon, prayers, reading, doxology. But in spirit, the two services couldn't have felt different. For some of the previous members of All Souls, the overtly theist language of the music at the 11 o'clock service was uncomfortable. In that first year, about 7 people told the board they were reducing or withdrawing their pledges because of the changes. And some others stopped coming. But at the same time, about 125 new members had joined. Mostly young people, 1/4 of them people of color. The church had to add 2 additional parking lots because they had so many visitors. Yeah. The mixed feelings about Christianity presented the All Souls minister with pastoral opportunities and concerns by men and women reaching out to Reverend Dr. Lavenar about past abuse in their Christian backgrounds, which he also saw as opportunities for spiritual growth. When members told him that they came to All Souls to get away from all that, he would probe what he meant by that, all that. And all they listed: authoritarian leadership, dogma, how women were treated, anti-intellectualism, homophobia, judgmentalism, etc. He would point out none of that had been brought into All Souls. At the same time, Bishop Pearson and his congregants also were presented with opportunities to expand the gospel of inclusion to include diverse identities or sexual orientation. Unitarian Universalist Church do not have a test of belief. There is no creed, but a covenant, a way we behave toward each other. As Lavinar said, our history is filled with people rejected for their religious beliefs. That is something we share with them. We're on this ship together. It's full of excitement and possibility and also danger and risk. By living out our covenant and statement of purpose, it has forced us to change. It is not forsaking Unitarian Universalism. It's becoming Unitarian Universalism.
That's Reverend Marlon Lavinar, the senior pastor at All Souls in Tulsa, and Bishop Carlton Pearson next to him. Wait, is there another one for that? Okay. We will do about 5 minutes of a discuss amongst yourselves. Find 3 to 4 people to sit with and to discuss the questions that are there on your the back of your order of service. And also, if there are any announcements that you have that you would like spoken from the pulpit, please write them down and hand them to me during this time. But find the questions on the back of your order service, and again, find 2 or 3 other people to discuss these questions with. I don't have them right here, so I can read them off. They are: when was a time you knew deep down in your heart something was true? How did that moment change your actions? Would you be willing to give up being the star and the benefits that go with fitting in with the established belief to follow your heart? What tools would you use to hold on to your faith in the face of opposition? Pearson's former congregation was very racially diverse, but less accepting of diverse identities or sexual orientations. When the music director at Higher D revealed he was gay, this created a problem for Pearson. But after his epiphany about universal love and his behavior toward his friend changed. Why, and do you have a similar example? So those 4 things are on there. If you would get with 2 or 3 other people and discuss for the next 5 minutes or so. Wind up your last thoughts, please. Oh, it's so hard to get you used to stop talking. Again, bring your discussions to a close, please. I have not been given any further announcements. The ones that I do have, today, after the service, there is, I think pizza was ordered, wasn't it? And then there is a meeting. At what time do we start the meeting? 12, probably? 11:45, it says. Okay, we're going to start the meeting. We're going to go grab your pizza and we'll start the meeting. There are fair trade items and good baked goods out there. On Monday, there's the Peaceful Heart Sangha Yoga Group at 6 p.m. There's a Sunday book discussion next Sunday at 9. And, of course, our services. 10:30. Whoa, can you wait just a minute? Also, today, the 3rd, is the kickoff of the UUFT Adopt a Family Project. The funds collected in the basket today, which we will do in just a moment, will pay for gift cards that will enable participants in the program to purchase food for their holiday meals, to purchase them themselves. The giving tree is back. Be sure to donate from the heart and pull tags from the giving tree today. Where is that tree, David? On the coffee bar. To share the holiday spirit with those who could use a little kindness and generosity this holiday season. The gift wrap party is on Sunday, the 17th, after the fellowship services. All right, and so now we're doing. We need some twin bed blankets for the homeless folk. Okay, so yeah, keep that in mind when you're donating for that. And now, have you already passed the basket or? Okay. From you I received this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. And now, in the blue books, the teal books, 128, and will you rise as you are able, and we will sing our closing song, Fire of Commitment.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please join for some pizza, but bring it back in here for our meeting that will be starting in about 5 minutes.